mentioned, a new teaching series that I'm calling Free. And I know that for most of us as Americans, we don't really think of ourselves as being slaves to anything, but yet we talk about how we don't have a choice but to behave a certain way or to respond a certain way. We think that we are controlled by our emotions or a certain situation. And so I think that this is a powerful study for us because we are slaves to something so much more powerful than chains. And the chains need to be broken away so that we can be free. So if you have your Bibles, turn with me to John chapter 20. We're going to start this series by looking at Jesus and how he broke free from death. And we'll continue to move through this teaching series, and we'll see how he has set us free from death, and from the fear of death, from our own will, our own desires that kind of lead us down a path that we don't really want to take. And ultimately how he has freed us to live in radically new ways. There are 4 words that I find myself as a father of 3 girls under the age of 7 saying more than any other 4 words. Why are you crying? And I wish I could tell you that whenever I speak those words, that those words are filled with compassion, and I'm really interested in wanting to know why they are crying. But most of the time, it's really spoken out of frustration. It's more like, why are you crying? And I don't really say it, but in my head I'm thinking, if you don't stop crying, I'm going to give you something to cry about. And I don't say it because I know that those words don't change anything. It doesn't stop the tears. It doesn't change anything that's happened. And inevitably, every time, I could sum up why they're crying is because they had something they wanted, and they didn't get it. And they cry so much more than I do because life has not hardened them. They still have hopes. They still have dreams. They still have this assumption that life is meant to be fair as they define fairness. They think that fair is that they should get to have ice cream for breakfast, or that just whenever they want to go to Disneyland or want to go to the beach or want to go anywhere, that fair is that they get what they want. But life is hard for me. I know that I don't always get what I want, no matter how hard I may try. There are some things that even though I want it, I can't get it. Victor Hugo published a novel in the 1860s by the title Les Miserables. In that story, there was a character by the name of Fantine. She was a young woman, and because of a summer love, she gave birth to a child. She got a job to care for this young daughter, but it wasn't enough, so she wanted to give this girl a life that she didn't have. So she entrusted this young girl to some innkeepers that were not trustworthy, but she sent them money. When it was discovered that she had this illegitimate child, she was fired from her job. And in the musical adaptation of this novel, she sings a song in desperation as she is now jobless. She's had to sell her hair and to sell her teeth, and now selling her body, and now at a broken point in time in her life where she is sick. She sings, I dreamed a dream of days gone by, but now life has killed the dream I dreamed. is exactly what you came here to hear on this Easter Sunday. This was what you expected to hear of sorrow and pain and despair and dreams that are crushed. That's what you came here for, right? No. But you were there. And if you're not there right now, you have been there, you're going to be there, or maybe your family member is there. Because everyone has a moment in time when they had a dream, you had a vision for the way that your life was going to turn out. And now, if you were honest, you would say, this is not how I wanted my life to be. You might say, I dreamed a dream of days gone by, but now life is killed. Dream a dream. And I bring you to this point because this is where Easter Sunday begins. Easter Sunday begins in this moment of despair. And we're going to look at John chapter 20 of a woman by the name of Mary Magdalene who is in this place. Read with me, starting in verse 11. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying as she wept. She bent over to look in the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. But she has no place to put this in her brain to process. You put something in a place and that thing cannot move, like a dead body. You expect that it's still going to be there. She has no way to comprehend what has taken place. And her grief is magnified that Jesus isn't in this tomb anymore. The angels ask her in verse 13, Woman, why are you crying? They have taken my Lord away, she said, and I don't know where they have put him. At this she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize that it was Jesus. He asked her, Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for? Twice in these 6 verses she is asked, why are you crying? The truth is, she has every reason to cry. If you know Mary Magdalene's story, you know the depth of the sorrow that she is experiencing at this moment. Luke chapter 8 tells us that she was a wealthy woman who was a follower of Christ. She supported his ministry. He had delivered her from 7 demons. Now, we're not told what those demons did in her life, the havoc that they wreaked in her life. But it doesn't take a vivid imagination to picture some of what she may have experienced. We know of other individuals that were possessed by demons and they were thrown into fires, they had seizures, they were disowned by their family. And Jesus set her free. Adding on top of that is the fact that she is a woman. And women were not treated very respectably in this society. A man by the name of John Bristow notes that many rabbis would not speak to their own family members who were females in public. He even goes on to note that there are some that were known as the bruised and bloody Pharisees because they would, whenever they saw a woman in public, they would close their eyes so that they would not look at a woman. And they would walk into walls and doors and things and bruise and bloody themselves. Every Jew woke up, first thing they would do in the morning is they would pray what they called the Shema from Deuteronomy chapter 6. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, call your mind. And then after they concluded that prayer, a good Jewish boy would then thank God that he was born a Jew and not a Gentile, and he was born a male, not a female. There was one rabbi that taught that it was better that the Torah, the law, was burned than to hear the law spoken by the lips of a woman. And here you have Jesus. He comes along and he is elevating women. He's having them, alongside with his ministry. He allows them to sit at his feet, which is a symbol of being a disciple. And so now not only are they able to speak the law, but they are taught the law. They have a place. But Jesus, he died. Now what's going to happen to this woman? Where does she have any hope that society around her is going to change? Why is she crying? Because she is now going to go back to the way that life was before. She had hoped that Jesus was going to change things, that Jesus was going to somehow change her life. Kurt Vonnegut, in his book, A Cat's Cradle, had a main character who was looking to write a book, and in his research came across a chapter in a book that was titled, What Can a Thoughtful Man Hope for Mankind on Earth, given the experience of the past 1,000,000 years. It didn't take him long to read that chapter because there was only one word. Nothing. I mean, this is the plot in life that Mary now has. All of her hopes were tied up in this man, and now he's gone. Now he's dead. And now the body's even gone. So why is she crying? She has every reason to cry. The second time she's asked, she thinks that she is speaking to the garden, according to verse 15. John is telling us something here. She doesn't think that it's the gardener just because that's who would have been around in this place. But John is telling us that she thinks that this was the gardener because of the story that John is telling. John begins his gospel in John chapter 1 by using a very specific language. In the beginning. That was the beginning of the Hebrew Scriptures, the beginning of the story of creation. Then John goes on to tell the story, and you have kind of some stories that are told back to back, and it's just the next day, and the next day, and the next day. Get to John chapter 2. Jesus is at a wedding festival, and it's on the third day that they run out of wine. And Jesus, even though he seems to be reluctant, he intervenes and brings new creation into this world and turns some water into wine. John tells of 3 miracles. He calls them signs. The first of them is the miracle of the water into wine. And he numbers them for a period of time. Then he stops numbering them, but he only tells of 7 miracles. 8, if you count the resurrection. And what John is trying to get the readers of this story to see is that Jesus is doing something here. That he is tying together a story that is told of long ago, a story that began in creation, and how things got distorted and broken. But now, on the 8th day, new creation breaks in. Jesus is bringing in new creation. And here's the first takeaway that I want you to see from this story. Is that hope is that one man can make every man and woman new. Gardeners have this incredible ability to bring life where there was no life before. Whenever I lived in Oklahoma, lived next door for a period of time to a man that was a fantastic gardener. And he spent hours, almost all day, out in his yard. And he had the most beautiful flowers. People, they would just drive by just to see this man's yard. And then there was my house. And there were weeds everywhere. I mean, I could not bring life anywhere, but this man, he had this ability to take a plot of land in which it was dead, and now all of a sudden there is new life there. And in the resurrection, Jesus is bringing in new life, new creation. And the hope is that this one man can do the same for every man and woman. And Jesus isn't the first that has come to teach and to talk about the afterlife. There were many teachers before him and many after him that would teach about the afterlife. What sets Jesus apart is he is the only one that demonstrated it. He is the only one that brought the afterlife here. He's the only one that actually raised from the dead. And many others would talk about the resurrection from the dead, but he is the only one that brought the resurrection from the dead. Jesus would call himself the resurrection and the life. Paul gives us this in Romans chapter 6. In a passage in which he is talking about the baptism that we experience whenever we come into Christ, whenever we are immersed into the waters and come into contact with Christ. He says that we have been united with him in a death like his. We will certainly also be united with him in a resurrection like his. That Jesus, the empty tomb on that day was God beginning a new week. He created the first creation in 7 days, and now a new week has begun. And it began with Jesus. We have this hope that he's going to do the same with us. It's popular for us to say that it's Friday, but Sunday's coming, or it's Saturday and Sunday's coming. But there's only one problem with that phrase. That Sunday, it happened once in the past. It was the beginning of the new creation, but we still live in brokenness. We still have dreams that are dashed. The doctor still makes a mistake and it costs you dearly. Your relationships are still fractured and broken to pieces. You still experience sorrow and pain. So how is it that Sunday is any kind of hope for us? Because Sunday is coming, but it's someday for us. It's not today. Yet Jesus looks at Mary, this woman who is weeping, and he calls her by name. And it's at that moment that maybe the tears clear up, or maybe just the sound of her name, the way that Jesus says it, she recognizes him and she turns, she grabs a hold of him. But Jesus looks at Mary, verse 17, and he says, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." He doesn't allow her to stay in this moment where her joy has been restored. She now is living in today, not on Sunday. Sunday's coming someday, but it's not here yet. And until then, he says, you have some work to do. I want you to go, and I want you to tell my brothers. But there's still more work to do. Paul references the resurrection 53 times. And almost every single time, he doesn't just leave it at Jesus is raised from the grave. He doesn't just leave it at the empty tomb with the light shining down. He uses that as a catalyst to move into the way that we are called to live today in light of Sunday. The hope of Sunday. For example, the passage that Josh read during our communion meditation in 1 Corinthians 15, one of the most in-depth descriptions of the resurrection. He ends verse 58 by saying, always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your work in the Lord is never wasted. He doesn't say, Christ has been raised, he went to the cross, he died for you, now just kind of hang out. Wait for things to happen. He says, there's work to be done. Get involved and go about the work of the Lord. And you can do it with boldness, knowing that that work is not going to be wasted. That you are joining in the new creation of this new week that has begun. That's the second takeaway that I hope that you leave here with, is that we live today because of Sunday, in the hope of Sunday. Everything that we do in this life is shaped by the resurrection. It was a normal Saturday of watching cartoons in the Van Pelt home when Lucy turns to Linus and demands that she go and get her a drink of water. Linus turns to Lucy and says, "Why should I get you a drink of water? What have you ever done for me?" Lucy looks at her brother and says, "On your 75th birthday, I will make you a birthday cake." He gets up and goes and gets the drink, and he says that things are a little bit easier whenever you have something to look forward to. And that's where we live. We live in this place where someday's coming. And there's work to be done. But we have to be free. We have to be freed of the chains that are keeping us in our own ways. The chains that are leading us into some destructive patterns. We have to be freed from them. I began time this morning with talking about Les Miserables, and I want to end by telling you the end of the story. And it's a little bit of a spoiler alert, but you've had 150 years to read the book, so it's kind of on you, not me, that you don't know how it ends. There's a man who is a criminal released from prison by the name of Jean Valjean, tries to atone for his sins and begins to live a very righteous life. He stumbles across the daughter of Fantine, and he saves her from the wretched life that she was living and enables her to live a new life. The end of the book. Victor Hugo writes to the Italian translator who's going to be publishing this work into Italian, explaining why he is writing this And it's because of the gospel. He's addressing the poverty and the treatment of women that is taking place in his culture. And he says that I am suffering the same that everyone else is. But I am trying to do something about it. And I'm writing this for all nations, for all people. He pleads, help me. Musical adaptation. They end with the chorus where all the parts, everybody comes out together and everyone is joining in song. Will you join in our crusade? Will you be strong and stand with me? There's a future about to start when tomorrow comes. The gospel story begs and invites us to join in the crusade of bringing new creation into the old. Will you join in that crusade? Some of you are here and you're looking for a church home, and I hope that you will consider Magnolia Center as we look to do the work, knowing that it's not wasted. If there's some way that we can pray for you, whether you're a member or a guest here this morning, it's our custom. We sing one more song and we invite you